just out on a ride in the villages on my Trek Madone. In my last video, I talked about how I trained for the Tour Da Yoop, 10-day, 1,200-mile endurance challenge around Michigan's Upper Peninsula. And in this video, what I want to talk about is how I used all my Zone 2 Century training rides to experiment with things in order to get ready for it. So, I know I mentioned in my previous video how I was doing 2 centuries a week, starting in March, all the way through towards later in July when I left for this thing. But for March and April, I was doing a lot of group rides. And then in May, I cut out all the group rides and just switched to strictly doing pretty much heart rate Zone 2 rides to train for it. And they were all solo rides where I would just go out by myself and just do the rides. Well, when I first started doing those in the beginning of May, they were fairly well regimented. I had a routine set up where before I'd go to bed at night, I'd fill up 4 water bottles, put them in the fridge, and have all my supplies all laid out for the next morning for the Century training ride. And then what I do is I'd get up in the morning, get ready, usually eat like a muffin and a banana for breakfast, and drink either a bottle of Powerade or Gatorade, or I'd mix up a bottle of water with a liquid IV or another hydration drink, and I'd drink that while I ate my breakfast. Then I'd head out on my ride, take 2 of the water bottles with me. I put 2 water bottles in a cooler along with the Uncrustable, one of those Smucker's Uncrustable peanut butter and jelly pre-made sandwiches, and a banana in the cooler, and maybe a couple pieces of chocolate. I'd leave that in the garage, and I'd plan on coming back there on my ride later in the day to get that stuff. And when I'd leave the house, I'd leave with 2 water bottles, some gel packs, and I'd take another Uncrustable peanut butter jelly sandwich and stick it in my jersey pocket. And then about mile 40 or 35, 40, sometimes maybe a little over 40, depending on what route I was taking that day, I'd stop at a Circle K or a 7-Eleven, get some more Gatorade and ice, refill my water bottles. I'd eat that peanut butter and jelly sandwich, be on my way, make my way back to my house, get there, and swap out my water bottles, eat the other peanut butter jelly sandwich and the banana and the pieces of chocolate. And I'd also have a bottle of water in the cooler that I mixed up with either Pedialyte or liquid IV, and I'd drink that. And also, since I was right there at my house in my garage, I'd swap out my gloves and my head sweatband for new dry ones. Then I'd go back out. I'd usually be over 70 miles at that point. Now, the thing is, in Florida, especially as you start getting into June and July, it starts getting really hot and humid. So where on the morning part of the ride, I could go maybe 40 miles on 2 water bottles. But towards the afternoon, when it started getting in the upper 90s with humidity and the heat index being triple digit, feel like temperatures, sometimes 2 water bottles would only last me 10 miles. And I'd have to stop right away again at another 7-Eleven or Circle K, get another extra large big gulp with ice and Mountain Berry Blast Powerade in it, and refill my water bottles, and get going again. Well, I pretty much followed that routine for, I don't know, probably the first 2 or 3 weeks of doing those centuries. And then I started running a bunch of what-if scenarios through my head. What if this? What if that? I should use these century rides as training opportunities to work out these what-if scenarios. So one of the things was, when you sign up for this ride, there's not a lot of riders in this ride. I mean, our typical day, we'd have 60, maybe 70 cyclists for the one day each day. You've only got a limited number of people that do all 10 days. Then you'll have other people that'll sign up for 5 days, and they'll do the east side or the west side of the state. And you have some people that just sign up for 1 or 2 or 3 days. So your core group, you'll see the same riders every day, but then you'll also see new faces that'll show up, and they'll show up for a couple days, and you won't see them again. You'll see some other new faces, and well, what they're doing is, so they're supporting a ride to SAG groups, figure 70 people. So this isn't like going to Six Gap in Dahlonega, Georgia, where you got thousands of cyclists show up, or going to the Horrible 100 in Clearmont, or some other larger one-day century ride where you've got hundreds or thousands of cyclists showing up. And typically, at those events, you'll have between 3 and 4 SAG stations along your century route. And every SAG station will be a food and a hydration station. Okay, the difference with the Tour Da Yoop is you'll have 3, sometimes 4 SAG stations. You're going to have one of them that's a really big food and hydration SAG, and that's usually in the middle of your day, or just 2/3 of the way through your day, and that'll be manned and set up by the local chapter of the UP's Lions Club. So each group that sets up that SAG station is different, and they're the ones supplying all the food and stuff at the SAG station. So what you see at one SAG on one day, you might see something totally different the next day, and then you might see something different again on the next day. So it varies day to day. Now, the other SAG stations are primarily hydration stations, and those are manned by the SAG group that's supporting your ride and driving the Ford Transit vans back and forth. And primarily on those stops, it's primarily hydration. They'll have water, and last year, and I think this year, that's sponsored by Hammer. So they had pre-mix of Hammer electrolyte drinks with water. So you had your choice between either the Hammer drink or the water. And sometimes they would have ice. Other times, if they're out in the middle of nowhere where they couldn't get ice, you wouldn't have any ice. So that would vary. But when I started going through my what-if scenarios, well, what if I get to a SAG station that's the food-based SAG station, and they don't have anything I like, or they don't have anything that I've eaten before on a ride, you know? Or another thing is, you're stopping in these small towns at the end of every day. What if I get to the one small town and all it has is one gas station / convenience store, and they have Powerade or Gatorade, but they have very limited flavor choices, and the 2 or 3 flavors they have are 2 or 3 that I've never trained with before. I'm like, okay, I need to start, instead of eating the same thing every time I go on a ride, and drinking the same flavor every time I go on a ride, I need to experiment. So what I would do is, I go back and forth between Gatorade and Powerade, depending on what's on sale at the grocery store. I got my certain flavors of Gatorade, Powerade that I really like. What's on sale, I buy, and that's what I use. And if the next week the other brand's on sale, I buy the other brand. Well, what I started doing was I would start buying flavors I never had before, and I'd start mixing those flavors up so I could find out, hey, do I like this flavor? If I have to have this flavor on my morning when I start out first thing in the morning, is it going to work for me? If I get to the gas station in a town in the Upper Peninsula and they only have 3 flavors, okay, I've tried all 3 of those flavors, and of those 3, I like this one the best, so that's what I'm going to buy. I didn't want to have a situation where I got up there and I walked in and all they had was 3 flavors, and I didn't know or tried any of those 3 flavors before, and find out what it's like on an actual ride day. I think I'd rather figure that out on a training trip. So I started experimenting. I also started experimenting with what am I going to eat? Because a lot of you know, when you travel out of town for a big Century ride, and you stay at a hotel the night before, typically you book a hotel that you know what kind of breakfast they're going to have, or you've stayed at that hotel before and you know what kind of breakfast they're going to have, and you know, this is going to work out well because I know I can eat A, B, and C and be just fine. Well, we're staying 10 nights up there. A few of them are chain hotels where I had an idea of what their breakfast would be like, and a lot of them were just independent hotels where I had no idea what their breakfast would be like. So I'd say, okay, I'm going to start eating different things for breakfast before my ride and just change stuff up and see what works and what doesn't work. And I also started when I would, instead of going back home and getting my cooler full of snacks, when I'd go into the 7-Eleven or the Circle K or the Dunkin' Donuts to refill my water bottles, I'd buy different food and I'd try different things. Okay, what's going to happen if I grab one of these pre-made egg salad sandwiches or pre-made turkey and cheese sandwiches? Or what happens if I grab an apple fritter and a bag of M&Ms? And I just grab random crap and eat it. So if I had a nutritionalist with me, they'd be slapping me upside the head saying, what the hell are you doing? But what I was doing was, there was a method to my madness. I wanted to know if I came across a sag stop with food that had no food that I'd actually eaten before during a ride, and I decided to try it, would I be good trying this or that? Or should I just skip it, or what should I do? So I looked at those long, boring Zone 2 Century rides as an opportunity to run through all those type of what-if scenarios. Then I came up with another what-if scenario. What if the hotel or the red breakfast I'm staying at has a breakfast, well, I don't like anything out there? Then what am I going to do? So I did, first I tried it on a couple of my 42 to 47 mile rides. I got up, didn't eat any breakfast. I'd fill my water bottles up that day with either Gatorade Zero or Powerade Zero with 0 calories. And I dropped my Precision Hydration 1500 milligram electrolyte tablets in there. And I'd go out and do my ride and see how I felt. And I wouldn't take any gel packs or any calories during the ride. I'd just go out and knock out the 42 to 47 mile ride on an empty stomach with 0 calories, see how I felt. After I did that a few times, I'm like, okay, now I gotta try this on a Century. And wait till I get to my first water bottle intake, you know, at the Circle K or 7-Eleven at the 40 to 50 mile mark, and do calories then. So I'd get up, yeah, fill up had my bottles filled with the Gatorade or Powerade Zero, with my Precision Hydration 1500 milligram electrolyte tablets dropped in there. Go out and knock out the first 40, 50 miles of my Century ride, and then when it's time to stop and refill my water bottles, I'd go in and just grab some food at the Circle K, 7-Eleven, or Dunkin' Donuts, and I'd eat some food then. And then from that point on, I do my typical like gel packs, and if I stopped again later to refill my water bottles, I might grab a candy bar or something and grab something different. But the whole point was I didn't want to eat the same thing that I knew worked every day on my training rides, because I already knew that worked. I wanted to see what happened if I tried off the wall shit and see if that worked and I was still able to complete my rides, and I was. And so I think that did help, and it allowed me to experiment, try other things, and that way when I went into these unknowns, I'd say, okay, I've been here before, I can do this, not a big deal. And it just makes it so you're more mentally prepared for that type of environment. Now, another thing I'll say about these long Zone 2, HR Zone 2 Century rides, they take a long time. I mean, depending on how hot and how humid it was, I would be somewhere between 6 hours and 6 hours and 45 minutes of pedal time to complete the ride. So that's for a Century, it seems like you're in the saddle forever. But another advantage to doing that, aside from the fact that you recover a lot quicker than that, is you get up there for the Tour Da Yoop, your shortest day is 114 miles. You have your second shortest day, I think, is 118 miles, and the other 8 days are 120 plus miles, with the longest day being just a hair under 129. So you got long days. Well, you're going to be going a lot faster up there than you do on your Zone 2 training rides, but because you were going so slow on your Zone 2 training rides, your pedal time or saddle time is about the same. So if you've been doing these long 100-mile Zone 2 rides, when you get up there to do those rides, that's how long you're going to be in the saddle. And so it's not going to feel any really, even though you're doing more miles, it's not going to feel that much different to you because you've been used to training, pedaling for that long and being in the saddle that long on your training ride. So that's another advantage doing that. So just wanted to go over how, instead of just doing the same boring thing over and over and over again, I tried to do something different each ride, different drinks, different food, pacing out my sag stops at different miles, and just, you know, changing it up a little bit so it wouldn't be the same regimented routine every time I went out on one of those Zone 2 Century rides. So I don't know, hopefully you get something out of this. If not, then hopefully I didn't waste too much of your time. That's all I wanted to cover today. I'll cover some other topics about this ride in the upcoming weeks and post some more videos on that later. That's it. Have a good day.